Okay, hello, we're live. I'm Miriam Webster. I'm meeting today with Patrick Marlborough. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on unceded land. I'm beaming in from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country in Naarm, and Pat's coming to you from Walyalup on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja country in Freo. We extend our respect to elders past and present and to any Indigenous folk joining us tonight. And I'd also like to take a moment to consider the ongoing importance of Indigenous knowledges, including care for country, and of course, storytelling, which brings us all here. So, I'm Miriam Webster. I'm a writer and teacher and academic based in Melbourne. I've published widely in Australian lit journals, and my first book, a collection of short stories called The Slip, came out last year with independent publisher Anico Press. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Pat. Those of you who are familiar with Patrick's oeuvre will know that they're a singular voice in Australian letters. What can't Pat do? They're a writer, comedian, novelist, journalist, critic, and musician. I didn't know you were a musician, actually. But anyway, we'll talk about that.
No, everybody hates it, so don't worry about it.
Everyone fucking hates it. Their critically acclaimed novel, Nock Loose, was released last year with Fremantle Press. We're going to be talking about Nock Loose a little bit tonight. They've been published regularly in many, many publications across the nation. They've won several prizes for unpublished manuscripts. They also front the podcast, The Battler, and they edit the Yeah Review on Substack. Welcome, Pat.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Good.
I should say I haven't won any awards. I get shortlisted. I'm not allowed to win things. So.
Yeah, you've been blacklisted. I wonder.
Yes. Let's get right into it.
They've got your photo up and they're like, not this guy.
Do not serve this person. Do not serve this they them.
Prize.
They see I arrive with a speech written on toilet paper every single time. I'm assuming.
You're like, excuse me.
Yeah. It's called Unabomber Manifesto 2, and one day I'm gonna get to read it.
Before we go on, before we get stuck into it, I just have to do a little bit of housekeeping. Toolkits Connect is a 12-week program for writers aged under 30 to develop their skills in a unique and exciting online environment. It's run by Express Media, which has been around for over 30 years, developing, supporting, and promoting young writers through workshops that develop skills and opportunities by giving constructive feedback and publication advice. Toolkits Connect is generously supported by the Copyright Cultural Fund and Australian Poetry. And if anyone's interested, this session will be available on YouTube as a resource, and it will be captioned in the coming days. If you'd like to ask any questions, please do so. You can put them in the live chat and we can do our best to answer them. Okay, so Pat, we haven't known each other long, but commentators of various creeds have described us as a dynamic duo.
Okay, good to know.
Be allowed to sit together up the back of the class. And too loud.
That's so true.
So true. And so in that spirit, I thought we'd do a weird little warm-up that I devised this morning. I'm going to say a word and you're going to reply with one word, the first one that comes to your mind.
God, are you trying to get me cancelled in the first 5 minutes? Let's go.
I'm psychoanalyzing you. Okay, ready?
I've been rewatching Deadwood recently, and my brain is full of 19th century cowboy slurs. So apologies in advance.
Well, that was something I was going to ask you about in your book. How do you come up with your very creative creative insults? Yeah, all the swearing.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Right.
Okay, we'll get to that. All right. Let's do the game. All right. Okay, ready? The first word, knock.
Loose.
No. Okay, what about Magda Subansky?
Polish.
Okay, energy.
Manic.
I knew you were going to say that, although I thought maybe you might say drink, and I was like, that would be on brand.
True.
Okay,
I'm not
what
allowed to
about
drink them myself, so that's why I have them in my books.
you're just living vicariously through your characters?
Because of the aforementioned manic energy, I cannot drink Monster. So,
so you had to make a fictional version thereof.
yeah.
Okay, what about if I say Oslit? He's meant to say the first thing that comes to mind.
I'm so sorry. The first thing that came to my mind was dog shit. I'm so sorry. I wish it wasn't the case, but it was the first thing that came to mind.
See, I'm setting you up for failure.
I think it's because it rhymes. So
yeah, Oslit, dog shit. I like how the policeman in Nock Loose, what's the line where he's like the dog killer gets called a proper dog cunt. It's genius. Okay, we'll do one more. What about when I say dog?
it is cunt. It is dog cunt.
Oh damn, that's only because I sowed the seed.
No, like that would have been the answer anyway. It's gonna get me in trouble, I guess, but I just think dog cunt is a beautifully poetic phrase. I think it's like Australia's cellar door to me.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. I feel like there should be more insults in Australian vernacular about horses.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Well, I grew up in the country.
Right.
Yeah, there should. I don't know what they would be. Maybe I should get creative.
I'm literally just thinking of scouring my brain if I know any. Just getting
Yeah.
angry at the Americans for killing Farlap as like the closest I can come for.
Yeah, horse ones are hard.
We should go back to calling Yanks Farlap killers. That's for sure.
Farlap
killing Seppo trying to tell me
you killed a national treasure. Okay, let's be serious for once in our lives. I think we should talk about the book because it's an incredibly singular and some would say deranged book. I think it's hilarious and strangely true to life. I grew up in a small country town, and it strikes me reading it that, like, obviously, although your caricatures of the local inhabitants are like absurd, they're also incredibly like realistic in a way. And so maybe the first question just generally is, how did you go about creating this place, Bodkin's Point, and why? Why did it have to be there?
Yeah, it's loosely inspired by a few real towns, which I was actually in this weekend visiting my family in the southwest. Walyalup, which hosts this medieval fair every year, which I covered for Vice in like 2016, and that loosely put the idea of what became Nock Loose in the back of my head. But Bridgetown and Donnybrook, and like I'm very familiar with that little strip because I have cousins in Bridgetown, and like once or twice a year I'll spend like a few days or a week there, spend every Easter there kind of thing. And I have a lot of family like from that region, and it breeds like pretty unique personalities. I think also in my fiction, like Fremantle is not it's like caught between a small city and a big town. You know, it's like it's a big hub, it's a big port town, but it's also like weirdly empty. And if you're a local, it's quite incestuous, and like you can't escape. If you're like me and you lived here your whole life, you can't escape the history and the regulars that are everywhere. And I think I like in my fiction sandboxes, and I like creating like little Springfields essentially to play around in. And like I do that. Usually I've done that in my other books with Fremantle and Perth. But with Bodkins, it was an excuse to have like a completely blank slate where I could invent the entire history from colonization onwards.
Yeah, totally. So it's a little bit of a framing technique. Yeah.
I think it's also like I think about like national readers, right? People don't know much about WA, so I can kind of treat WA as a bit of a sandpit. Like obviously Nock Loose is cartoonish with its history, but like it's grounded in real histories, and like the dates do match the dates of these towns kind of thing. And I I think people being largely ignorant of these places gives me permission to get a little bit weird with it, which I like.
Yeah, and I think it's also like it plays with some pretty like some tropes that could be applied to country towns across the whole of Australia. Like I was just rereading this bit before where Bodkins is described as being in the middle of a resplendent valley, and then the main street is lined with typical businesses from towns in the region: the old bank, now a gallery, the old grocery, the IGA, the old bakery, always the old bakery, a few cafes where the locals get their flat whites, a Chinese restaurant, some antique shops, the hippie shop, and the cop shop. And I was like going through that list, and I was literally picturing the main street of Mount Beauty where I grew up. And that's in Northeast Victoria. And I was like, this is the town that I grew up in. So there's something very obviously highly specific, but very general about that kind of caricature.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I guess that leads me to my next question, which is like, when you were writing it, did you think a lot about, or did it just come naturally, this sort of this play with like the Australian cultural mythscape? Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah. Again, like it's like a pretty common thing in my fiction, and I guess like my comedy especially like messes around with that a lot. I like the Australian mythopia. Like I don't know. I'm obsessed with Australian history, colonial and modern, for its dagginess, and like it's kind of like it's just such a lame country, and the foundational I don't know, psychic split of this country is that we committed like a Holocaust to found it and create it. And what did we build with it? Like a JB Hi-Fi parking lot. It's like, that's the image that is in my head constantly. It's like, this is what the reign of terror led us to. It was like a Harvey Norman outlet mall. And I look at like the people we elevate in this country, and it is a land of just like chronic mediocrities. And I find that as someone that likes taking the piss, like it's obviously like very rich for that. So I have all my books share the same universe, which I call the Montaverse, which is the fictional energy drink brand in all the books. So like characters interlink with in all the novels and stuff like that. And I kind of have like an alternative Western Australian history timeline that I have like a mega sheet of to refer to with all the books. So like certain incidences can overlap. Which like nobody knows about because only Nock Loose has been released. So like there's a bunch of in jokes in Nock Loose that if all the other books came out, people would be able to build this like West Australian timeline and hopefully piece it together. And like I like micro histories. Like I love the histories of like the history of Oslit. I love reading the history of publishers because it's such small stakes, and it's like such like hysterical personalities that are fighting over scraps, and they're always just such weirdos, and like it's at the end of the day it's for nothing, and like I just think that to me is like very rich and very funny, so I can't ignore it.
Do you think that that's like, okay, so how does this relate to like, do you think that the mediocrity of the world somehow like encourages or licenses the absurdity of or maybe like the violence? Like why this medieval festival?
Well, I mean, there's a few reasons with why the medieval festival. Like on a literal level, it was like, I was satirizing this real festival, and like just I think the initial conception of the book, Asian Court, was not a very big part of it in my initial idea in my head, because I was going to write this straight revenge thriller almost as a challenge to myself, because I can't not be a piss taker. I was like, I'll write it humorlessly, and it will be set loosely around this festival, but the festival itself won't be violent or weird. It would just be happening adjacent to this. And then as soon as I started writing the second chapter, it became what it is in the book, right? Because I just have no self-control, unfortunately. But I am really fascinated by the intersection of like banality and violence in the Australian character and Australian history, and like Australian like masculine violence in particular, and the kind of violence that is around Australian traditions. Like I grew up in a town that was like Fremantle is a port town, and street fighting and just like huge brawls was just a big part of my youth, either like witnessing them or just ambiently everywhere all the time. That kind of air of violence, like, it's something that I am very used to, and it bled into like any music festival, any football game. There was going to be a huge punch up. So I think it's just like in the back of my head as a thing that is in the Australian character. And I think obviously, like within the text, like the town's founder, has committed this horrific massacre, which is inspired by about 3 of the real massacres that happened. Like WA's colonial massacres took place relatively late compared to the rest of the country, and even the ones in Nock Loose are out in the middle point of the history. They're still happening like into the 1930s, which is just hard to imagine. But this psychopath has, I think in the book, is something like we're gonna perfect history by rewriting it, is like the sentiment. And so like they're reenacting this wildly anachronistic ritual unconsciously, that is unconsciously traveling towards the reality of the colonial violence, while none of these guys have the wit or ability or emotional depth to actually interrogate that history. And the tension of that is like, one of the major plots running underneath the main story of the book.
And the self delusion is where the humor comes from.
Yeah. I just think it's that thing. Like I think I'm very much a child of the history wars of the Howard years, where there was this crazy valorization of Australian history that almost made it cartoonish. Like they made the digger into like a superhero. But when you, as I'm a nerd, and like when you really get into the history, the unreality of the history as it's taught to us, when it butts up against the actual primary sources and the actual reality of colonial history, imperial history, just the banal histories of Australia, that the tension between the gap between the reality and the narrative is where the tragedy comes in. It's also where the comedy comes in, I guess.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting that this word unreality, because sometimes, I don't know if you'll hate this, but like, I feel like Nock Loose is just kind of like a deranged, grown-up version of the shows we grew up with, like Round the Twist, or like,
very intentional.
Book, but for now.
Yeah. That's very intentional. Yeah, like I like my books all exist in this like hyper reality. It's weird. Like I ground it in realism with the characters and maybe like their emotional landscapes, I guess, to a degree. But the world they live in is very like South Park coded.
Yeah.
Where like anything can happen, and obviously like the violence of Nock Loose is completely absurd. Like, even if you stop and think, like, what is the legality of this fucking festival? How does this work? Like, the whole thing would fall apart. I have characters like very like brush over things like very stupid ways, and there's jokes in the book that kind of explain it away. But like, I'm not that interested in like realism in that sense as like a satirist. Like, my hope is it's cartoon logic, right? Like when you watch Looney Tunes and Wile E. Coyote runs over the cliff and is running on air for 5 seconds, you don't say to your head like a coyote can't do that. Within the logic of the Looney Tune, that makes complete sense. And so I think my work, Nock Loose, maybe be more explicit than my other stuff. Maybe I try to establish that it's internal logic pretty quickly so that you can follow the rest of the book. Because if it doesn't work for you, it's never going to work for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was about to literally say that, like, it's surprising how quickly you do, reading Nock Loose, get into this, like, this cartoon logic, and accept, you take the book on its own terms from the very start.
Go on. Yeah, sorry.
No, you go.
No, I just like, I think that part of that for me is like anxiety, maybe, about people won't get it. Like, there's a more subtle version of this book, but I don't think it works. And it was the version I was maybe writing in my head for a long time. But when I spewed this version out, again, it's like very much how I structure my bits. It's like it's a shaggy dog joke. The punchline is right up the front, and then by the time it comes about and hits you again, you've kind of forgotten that. Like, I just think, and I know this again from my live shows. Yeah, like, if I don't establish, because my live shows are so frenetic and manic and like frightening and like quite overwhelming, right? And if I don't make that clear to the audience in the first 3 minutes that the next hour is going to have this unreal vibe to it, they're going to have a hellish time sitting there. And I feel the same with the book. It's like, just so you know, this is what you're getting into.
You're going to get a roll.
Yeah. You can go with it, or you can have the worst time of your life. And either way, I completely understand.
You're like, I get it.
I always get 5-star reviews on my opening night, and then the second night all the boomers come, and I get to watch them one by one either walk out or look at me like they just want to fucking murder me with it, just like this.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like what I wanted to ask. I don't know if this is, let's just go with it. I feel like I want to ask you about what your relationship is to genre and form, because like obviously comedy influences a lot, but you've also been called like, you know, a new Australian postmodern writer. You've been likened to Kurt Vonnegut, because I suppose of the way, because of the cartoonist logic, but also because of the way Nock Loose is combining kind of like high and low culture and like niche and pop culture, and the Australian mythscape, and that, but then also like various literary forms. Like I would still say that it is a realist novel in many ways. Like, you know, Bay's realist conventions, as you said, the characters have kind of like vivid inner lives, and they have their motives are explained. So I just want to, what do you have to say? Form.
I have so much to say about this, because I always say that I'm a form guy in a content world. Like yes. I like form. Like that's the appeal of writing to me, and that's what I've been chasing as a writer and a reader my whole life. Like really, it's a reading journey thing. Like what can you do within these structures and within the bounds of language that is playful and experimental? I would say Nock Loose would be the most conventional thing I ever write, both narratively and even how it's lands on the page. It has quotation marks. I usually use the Joycean M- system, and the only my publisher basically begged me not to do that, which is how it was originally written.
Really?
And the only reason I changed my mind on this one was because I'm satirizing like the small town with a big secret kind of crime genre, and also like a lot of fantasy fiction, which is presented conventionally. So I convinced myself that I don't have to go full Samuel Beckett on this one.
I mean, it works, doesn't it? Because if you had the M dashes, it would just be a totally different book. Like
it's and like my other book that really is heavy on the M dashes is very dialogue heavy and very like, I mean, this as well, but it's much more like rapid. I like dialogue and I like rapid. I like the sound of language, so I like characters talking and overlapping. And in my other book, which is set in Fremantle and is like, I always picture it as like Ulysses meets season 3 of The Simpsons. It's like it is a big messy intersection of voices by design, and you're meant to get confused. And the plot of that one is like, it's not so much about the plot, whereas Nock Loose is, by my standards, very plot heavy. So like I had to kind of, and also like what I'm saying in it is so fucking insane that I have to make it as like clear for the reader, I think, as possible for it to work. But like I don't know, like I think in Australian publishing it's hard to have fun with form. I don't think publishers like it, and I think readers have been told they don't like it, and I don't think that's necessarily true. Especially with comic fiction, like more quote unquote serious writers can have more fun with how words land on the page than someone like me. Like I consider myself, working in the postmodern literary tradition, but like, you know, my big influences are Moby Dick and like Melville, which is a book that's chapter after chapter is fucking around what you read it now, and it's incredibly contemporary with what he's doing with form. You know, one chapter looks like a newspaper article, the next one looks like a play. There's all kinds of stuff like that. But like writers like Thomas Pynchon and Robert Coover and Helen DeWitt, who are like my big 3 contemporary quote unquote influences. I think it's that tricky thing of like an intersection between playfulness on the page, clarity, because as much as I like difficult, thorny, overwhelming literature, I think if you're trying to be the kind of funny that I'm aiming to be, clarity is kind of key to a degree. Like I have 10,000 jokes and they all have to be paid off by the end, but I don't want it to, how do I put it? Like my biggest fear is to be considered a humor writer like David Sedaris. Like I don't consider myself that. It's like, it's literary fiction that is capital F funny. It's not New Yorker funny, but I don't consider it comedy writing either. And then on the other hand of this with genre, right? Like, like I'm influenced by so much stuff. Like I'm a huge cinephile. I read a lot of comics, and I came very late to manga and anime, and there's a lot of that in this. And I love stand-up, and I love the history of folk and country and blues music and all that stuff. And it always goes into all of my books and video games. Like I love video game logic, and I want to get the language and texture of all those things that I love on the page. I think the challenge of like, how do you represent, like this other book I'm working on, like the language of like a fighting game like Tekken, how do you adapt that to the written page and make it literary, not make it like, because you could do a general fiction slop version of it pretty easy. I would also say, final note, in terms of genre, the real genre that Nock Loose is satirizing is not so much crime fiction and like Oslit paperback stuff. That is there, but I abandoned it pretty quickly because I don't love that stuff, and it's hard to spoof something you don't love. I do love Tolkien and the George R. R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series, which I used to be a hater of until I read it. Classic story. And like structurally, and what this book is doing with like, especially narrative, is very much like satirizing Tolkien and Martin, like the way it delivers information through. Here's almost like flashback chapter that's info dumping a crazy amount of stupid exposition. I particularly love in George R. R. Martin's book, you have like a very minor character say one line, and like 5 books later, it turns out that is a major subplot that you can trace a conspiracy thread through and build this whole arc out of. There's stuff like that in Nock Loose I don't think many people have picked out yet, but it's in there.
Yeah, I mean, no, it does. Like my sense when I was reading it was that it was almost like Dickensian, and I thought like characters, and like, you know how like the characters' names are often kind of indicative of their role in the story, and like I was thinking maybe
the Artful Dodger and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was thinking that maybe it was no coincidence that you were kind of satirizing this kind of like the high 19th century novel, which was immensely popular, of course, at the time when Australia was being settled. And like this is kind of like another layer of like addressing that sort of tension between narrative and history that you were talking about before.
Yeah, I mean, I do love Dickens a lot, and but there's a lot of like bad Australian 19th century purple prose, like post Dickens prose, that's like serialized and like in what do you call it, the big Australian magazine from the late 19th, early 20th century, that all the bush poets wrote for. But I have a big collection of that, and just like these very overwrought short stories, with these very on the nose named characters, and that definitely is like quite intentionally like a big part of the Nock Loose, like especially like the flashback chapters, like the characterization of like the early history kind of characters, for sure.
Super cool. Characters are very strong. We sort of talked about it a bit, but I wondered if you could just kind of like give us some talk about your characters. Where did they come from? Who are they and why?
Characters are my favorite part of writing, and like and reading. It's funny, like, because I read quite, I guess relatively abstract fiction. A lot of the time characters are not super important, but in the books where they are, say like Ulysses, like people don't think about it, but I think of Ulysses like as a book filled with rich characters and lots of rich minor characters that really pop out to you. Joyce is great at writing a guy that's technically a minor character that sticks in your head forever, like Buck Mulligan, or Simon Dedalus, Stephen's dad, is one I always refer back to. My characters arrive to me like really fully formed, and like it's kind of scary to me because they dictate the narrative. Like I'll be writing, going in a different direction, and it's almost like they arrive in the room with me and they're like talk me out of it. And they're really, the best example in Nock Loose is Conway the dad, who is either people's favorite or least favorite character. But Conway in my initial conception, I think when the book was a bit more humorless, was quite a much more abusive figure. Like he is no doubt an abusive father in the book, but in a way that you're almost positioned willing to forgive a little bit. Initially, he was not forgivable. But then it was almost like as soon as I started writing him, he was like, hey man, like I'm a fun guy. I'm doing my best. Like kind of thing. And it really changed. Same as like Arthur, like the king character. Arthur was initially the villain. And like Callum came in the conception like quite late into writing, like because I improvise as I write. So like I wrote the first draft of Nock Loose that got shortlisted in 10 days, and it just spews out of me. And so it's like I don't have control of it, and then I'll go back through the edits and make sure the characters are consistent, the logic is consistent. But it is funny, like it's such a weakness of mine that I introduce characters that I think were meant to be one thing, and then I fall for them too much, and they go from being detestable to even the police officer character. Ryan's was meant to be like a real villain, and by the end of the book, people like him. Like he's a dope dealing, corrupt, stupid cop, but like.
I mean, I feel like that's what happens in a small town too. It's like you hate people, but you all have to live together, and so
that's the thing.
There's this I don't even know what the right word is for it, but you just got to live there. You kind of,
and everybody in this town is technically like a murderer when you think about it. Like they've all committed heinous violence or are a victim of heinous violence. Like they're all victims of PTSD. You know, there's a joke in the book in the town hall meeting where this is a spoiler, I guess, and it's technically key to the book, but it's revealed that everybody has lead poisoning, that the town was founded on like a lead mine, and that the cider that they drink and the apples that they farm are on these lead-rich hills, and then so they're just generations of lead poisoning, which is maybe why they're all the way they are. But it's kind of just
lead-rich hill.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's all. It's kind of dismissed as a gag, but like it is there if you wanted like a little bit of an explainer. But I think also like it's like if you want like likability in characters, I what shits me about Australian fiction, characters tend to be very boring. They're cliche. They're almost like naturalistic to the point of being cliches, and they get reduced down to types. And you know, it's why so many protagonists of Australian books are academic writer readers. You know what I mean? Like there's not really like a willingness to create freaks or people that don't fit like easy molds. And I guess like I do come from a town that is famously like full of characters, and so I think in terms of like how do you make a very strange person realistic, because that's who I grew up around, you know.
Yeah, and I mean I am intrigued by this, because how do you go about creating a freak on the page?
Yeah, I think we'll use Conway, right? Who, if people haven't read it, Conway is the protagonist's dad. And in flashbacks, we spend a lot of time with him. He's a thief. He's a terribly negligent father. He's a narcissist, and he's a con man, pathological liar, and a very bad alcoholic. And I think it's quirks of language for me. Like again, I like writing dialogue. I'm an impressionist on stage. I'm very good at voices, and I try to put that in the fiction. Like I think if you're just a tip for young writers, if you want to make a character distinct, think about how a person talks and their tics and the kind of asides they would make. I think the understanding a character's limitations of humor, I think, is very important. Can this person riff? I think is a really good thing to have in the back of your head. Conway can't really riff, but he's a very funny guy. That's because whether he's aware of how funny he is a different question. And another, again, like I love cartoons and I love comics. Think of the silhouette rule. You know, if you're making an iconic cartoon character, can you recognize this character by their silhouette? I think it's a good idea to apply that to your fiction. Start with like a 2D shape and think of like especially in my books where there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of characters, I think you have to make them kind of each one pop so people don't get lost in this soup. What can you give them that's like a little tick of like fashion or interest or mode of being? Like I think make them actually very two-dimensional, and then you'll be surprised how 3D you can make them from that point on, is what I say to people.
Yeah, that's so true, because it strikes me now that there's so many physical descriptions of characters in your that aren't necessarily like, you know, like they can be quite abstract sometimes, like the bit where Conway is described as like a fire hose sort of wiggling all around. Such a strong image though, really, like that silhouette kind of sticks for the rest of the book.
Yeah, I think it's like you don't have to do it super consciously and you don't have to do it as pedantically as I'm explaining it, but I do think it is good to have a visual metaphor language that sticks to a character. So yeah, Conway is the fire hose. I think at one point he's a twined leather belt kind of thing, like that kind of sinewy energy to him. He's got a springy vibe to him. I don't know why I'm explaining this to whoever's listening, but like I think applying like a consistent, like a leitmotif to a character really helps them pop out. And I think also like people's characters are too consistent in a lot of contemporary fiction. It's a real flaw that I find. People are not consistent. People contradict themselves constantly, and are more unpredictable than I think people think. And I think that lends a level of realism to them, for sure.
Yeah. Totally. This is something I think about all the time, just having, been edited by various editors. There's often this kind of push from editors to be like, this character doesn't feel consistent. And I always think, but people aren't consistent. And like, why are we so wedded to this idea of a consistent character? And I think that that sort of improvisational quality of your writing also lends to that effect. Like there's this energy, almost like a rabid energy, that people will kind of like roll along and adapt and improvise, and they will change as they go. But it doesn't, that doesn't necessarily mean that their characters aren't consistent. I think
it's like, I think people conceive themselves as like, everybody is consistent except for me, I think, is like the way that people think about it a lot of the time. Like if you read, like the narrator will be the only character that's like allowed change, which like kind of within Nock Loose is kind of the opposite. Like Joy is quite an emotionally static character really until the violent reckoning. But yeah, I mean, I also think the thing that affects that for me is that I'm from a giant family of literally 120 people. I think it's 121 cousins or something. Yeah. So like we all sit around a table like this weekend. There's like 50 of us for 3 days just sitting around eating and drinking. Everyone shouts over each other. I've known these people my entire lives. And it's a mess, but they're all such distinct personalities. And I think that for me was a real training grounds for like how to capture that on the page, I suppose.
Yeah, it comes through. It comes through. It's chaos. I really was hoping that you could be prevailed upon to read a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe we can do that to send it off.
I'll say to the listeners, I hate reading out loud. It's the only time I get tongue-tied. And
hey, don't make me look bad.
I hate reading my own work, and my instinct is to riff and improvise. So I'm going to be reading this meaning like, wouldn't it be funnier if I did this instead? And then I'll get in trouble. So anyway, this is I'll go through this chapter is chapter 3. It's called The Captain King, and this is kind of where I guess I introduce the idea of Asian court properly and the founder of the town of Bodkin's Point, Captain Bodkin. Right after the big fire that starts the book. Oh God, wish me luck. The only things that survived the fire were Joy's medals. Their ribbons were gone, and they were warped and melted in places. But you could recognize them for what they were, totems of victories long past. Everything else, her photographs, her clothes, her furniture, her books, the house she was born and raised in, was ash, soot, and rubble. Even her bows were gone, all but one. She first picked up a bow aged 6 at Asian Court, 1964, then the 95th consecutive Asian Court. Asian Court was Bodkin Point's pride, its everything. Begun in 1869, a year after settlement, Asian Court was conceived, hosted, funded, and fought in by the town's wealthy, quasi-mythic founder, Captain Bodkin, the first of his name, and first king of Bodkin's Point. The captain believed maybe, his own ancestors had fought and died gallantly at the Asian Court of legend, that the blood of great knights ran through his veins. Captain Bodkin, whom you could generously call an eccentric, spent a small fortune on the festival each year, shipping antique armor and weaponry from around the world to the little town he built in the bush on the back of its timber, tin, and apple trees, all of which he owned the majority stake in. At the first reenactment, he armed the town's men and boys, divided them into French and English armies, then had them go at it at the foot of Bodkin Hill, a steep, treeless slope at the back of his ever-expanding estate. A soldier and a policeman before he was a land baron, Captain Bodkin drilled the town as if he were raising a rebel army, training the timber workers, shearers, miners, pub owners, apple farmers, pickers, and drunks in the arts of chivalry and swordsmanship, bestowing titles, sigils, and heraldry on his favorite families, his bastards, and knighting anyone who pronounced Asian Court with a hard G, Agincourt, as a mispronunciation that had stuck with the township ever since. The townsfolk took all this good-humouredly at first, indulging the famous captain's whims and thuggish fancies under the mistaken belief that this was a one-off carnival of fun held to ring in the town's first year on the map. But good humour turned to intergenerational feuds when Captain Bodkin insisted they fight with the intent to kill. Just intent, mind you. Nothing rougher than the drunken footy matches they played against their neighbouring towns. A touch of maiming and or crippling here and there, the odd death being an unfortunate, if not unforeseen, consequence. The inaugural Asian Court left 3 dead and 19 seriously wounded, with the town's only doctor losing both his hands to a broadsword, thus having his ability to mend the rest of the busted and broken severely inhibited. But news of the then weekender spread to neighbouring towns through Bridgetown and Donnybrook and Ballingup, until the fable sank its way up to Perth and became talk of the city, a punchline and a curiosity in a place that was determinedly incurious and hated being the butt of any joke. The ranks of the French and English armies swelled over the following years, and Captain Bodkin, who they crowned the Captain King, would wade into the muddy melee on the back of his aging warhorse, swinging his saber at big city lawyers, accountants, newspapermen, engineers, dock workers, shipwrights, bums, journalists, and rubberneckers, often charging them with his homemade eucalypt lance, to which he'd attached his army bayonet. The money from the event swelled Bodkin points in Captain Bodkin's coffers, shielding the Bodkinites from the economic ups and downs that buffeted their neighbours. The town kept afloat, for the most part, by the ever-growing interest in this wholly unique tradition and the madman who helmed it. The Captain King died after being kicked in the head by one of his cows in 1902. It was his youngest son, William Bodkin, then 16, who over the course of his reign as the Long King, transformed a weekend of violence and grog into a week-long festival of fun, mirth, mayhem, violence, and grog. The battle remained, as did the bloodshed, but the deaths became few and far between, relatively at least, as Agincourt opened itself up to characters and narratives that went beyond swinging a mace in someone's face, though that remained the dominant motif. People from all over the state, the nation, and eventually the world came to know and marvel at this little bush town and its quaint tradition, drinking in as readily as they did the much-loved Captain Bodkin cider the town was also so famous for. For the Bodkinites, Agincourt was everything. It consumed their lives and often sealed their fates. Joy was no exception.
Woo!
Thank you.
Amazing. Even just I just love the humor in the slip between Agincourt and Agincourt.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I do the audiobook, I can't decide which one to pronounce it as for the rest of the book.
Yeah, well, I feel like you have to go with Agincourt, don't you?
Yeah, I think you would. Yeah.
Yeah, you
from
would.
that point on.
Thanks so much for reading, Pat. That was awesome. I think we're approaching the end of the session, but I wanted to ask you maybe quickly, what's next? Do you have anything in the works? And assuming we've managed to convince a whole new swathe of Patrick Marlborough fans, where can they go? Where can they go to hear and read more of you?
Too many places, unfortunately. I've got 4 finished novel manuscripts that I am sitting on that I'm being shipping around. Some of them predate Nock Loose, A Horse Held at Gunpoint, which was shortlisted for the Fogarty in 2021. Crikey, which was meant to be coming out in September through a micropress, but that just fell apart this week. So I'm still trying to find ways to fix that. If people want to help me fund that, I will have a link on my Instagram soon. There is FIFO Bebop, which is my retelling of Dante's Inferno, but made to be about 2 FIFO mining workers on the night out in Northbridge and Perth. I hope that finds a home soon. And then there's one I wrote last year, which features a major character from Nock Loose in it, called Wagger's Champloo, set in 2002, and it's about 4 boys who wag school to enter a video game contest hosted by like a Cheese TV type show at a fictional Sega World equivalent on Perth's foreshore. And it's kind of like Stand By Me, kind of them trying to get from Fremantle to Perth in under 6 hours. It's like a tribute to 2002, like Australiana culture around the twist and that kind of stuff, and Osama bin Laden. I dedicated the book to Osama bin Laden, which might be what putting off publishers and stuff when they read it.
Yeah, I feel like that might be putting some people.
Hey, what can you say? He won.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
And before we get cancelled, where can people read more of you at present?
I have a Substack horribly called the Yeah No Review. I used to write for just about every publication under the sun, but the whole industry's collapsed in the last 2 years, so I never know these days. But if you follow me at Cormac McCafe on Instagram, it's probably the easiest place to keep up. And I do have a weekly podcast, but like, if you're a young innocent soul, like don't listen to this. It's called The Battler, which is like an Australian politics culture podcast, and we do interview a lot of Australian authors such as Miriam. So if you want to just skip straight to the interviews, they are very informative. You don't have to listen to me doing what if Trump fought in Dynasty Warriors impression for 15 minutes. There's a whole world out there.
If you're a young, innocent listener, don't listen.
Yeah. Please don't cancel me. I'm 35. I can't be canceled for the 400th time.
You can't recover. You're too old.
No, I survived woke 1 and 2 by the skin of my teeth.
Oh man! All right. Well,
and now for my beloved gay Daniel Plainview impression. No.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like the time has definitely run out. Thank you.
Looks like it.
Pat. Yeah, I reckon. Thanks, Pat, for coming and chatting, and for your beautiful reading. Thank you to anyone who's out there listening. I hope you enjoyed it. This session's going to be on YouTube, and it will be captioned in the next few days if you want to revisit tonight's conversation. And you can also check out the archive of Toolkits live on the Express Media YouTube. That's it from us. Thanks, Pat. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too. See you when I see you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.